What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Vol Phonetics Show podcast. However you listen on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you tuning in. My name is Skylar. Michael, my co-host. How we doing, Bubba?
We're doing pretty good. We are coming off a Tennessee loss, but you know what? We all expected Tennessee to lose yesterday. The game went pretty much how we expected it. So, I mean, you can be disappointed in the loss, but I mean, when you expect it, you can't really be down on that. It's like we were after that Missouri game. So, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Throat's a little sore, not from necessarily the game yesterday. Because there wasn't much to cheer for after the first play. But I woke up a little sick, but we're trying to push through for you guys. Before we get into that abysmal game, which was exactly like predicted, as expected, like we didn't really see that going any different. But do you have any shout outs for the show this week?
So I don't really have any shout outs, but I will shout out one person because I do hope that he is back today. We missed him last week. I hope Robert tunes in today. And Robert, if you are watching this, man, we missed you last week. Give us some comments on there, man. We look forward to having your comments. I know your shout out that I'll let you give. He also comments on there as well. So
no, absolutely. My shout out of the week this week has actually been probably been with us since day one. He's messaged me, but his name is Sean Carpenter. Lifelong friend, really played ball with him, went to school with him, and he supports us. He does his wrestling thing, man. So check it out. It's pretty cool. I catch his little videos that he posts on Facebook. So shout out to him. But yeah, he was in the chat last week and the week before. And then he also shares a show out. So we appreciate you, Sean, and anybody else listening. If you guys want to be a shout out for the week, man, just it's pretty simple. Reach out to us or shoot a text or a comment in the live and just show that you're being interactive. Shout out the show, whatever you do, we all appreciate it regardless. So again, Sean, thank you. And Robert, we miss you. Absolutely. But I guess without further ado, man, let's go ahead and talk about these Vols, man, because I think we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we got something to talk about. Of course, like we said, game went exactly how we thought it would. And Georgia ended up covering. I did not expect a 75-yard touchdown run from Jalen Wright right off the bat, but like you said, from there it just kind of went downhill. Georgia just methodically, took apart Tennessee's defense. It's not that Tennessee's defense necessarily played bad. It was just Georgia was they were finding the gaps in the defense. They're finding the holes, and it seemed like every single play that Georgia run was perfect for whatever defense that Tennessee was in at the time.
Well, Tennessee was kind of fighting an uphill battle. Georgia, unfortunately for Tennessee, was probably the healthiest they've been all season. Between the running backs, obviously Brock Bowers was back. But then why I say that's even more dangerous is not only are they back healthy, that's their star players, but then you're facing their backups that are coming in when they rotate. And now they have in-game experience for quite some time. So, it was really an uphill battle. Defense didn't lay down. I'm not going to say they played good. But I always had a saying kind of in the stands, I'm like, bend, don't break. And we did that in the first drive. I was really, I was proud of it. We capitalized when, Georgia had a fumble in the first drive. I think it made it like 2nd 18. We made a bonehead timeout call for some reason when we would have clearly stopped them. Obviously, that's kind of hindsight because you call the timeout before the play was ran. By the way, Neyland was so loud during that series that we actually broke the decibel record in college football at 137 decibels. And not to call shots, but we don't pump our decibel level, all right? Like some folks at Sanford Stadium do. Sanford Stadium, excuse me. Because I can promise you there's no way they got up to 125, 130 like they said they did. But no, that was pretty cool. Fortunately for Georgia, that was about as loud as it got, and it was not even close really to that level of noise after about the first quarter. But no, it's frustrating. I was kind of mixed emotions about the game. Georgia did exactly what I thought they were going to do, so I'm not going to really talk about how dominant they were because we knew they would score. I knew they were going to score 30 points. I knew they were going to score 38. I was just hoping that we would score more than 10. It's just so unfortunate that our offense can't put together a methodical drive. It's either home run play or nothing. you come out, you score on the very first play of the game, right? And then the next two drives are 3 and out, 3 and out. That can't happen. No. And, as much as I hated to do this, because I know it's a big game, but I was ready for Nico in the second half. Joe Milton had zero responsibility for why we even scored in the first place. So at that point in my mind, it wasn't necessarily too late to put in Nico, but I'm also torn because I know if you throw in Nico can't play defense. So they're going to score 38 points regardless if Nico is in or not. But I guess my whole point is it's about time for the changing of the guards, in my opinion. And the last 2 weeks, the offense has scored 17 points. That's just not going to get it done, man. You're talking about an offense that I think played, 14 of their first 15 games under Heupel and scored 30 in all of them. So, I mean, it's crazy to see the last 2 weeks, just the lack of production.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that I'm there on the changing of the guard, but then again, at the same time, it's right there at the end.
Why not? Why not? I mean, what's your take on it? I mean,
it is right there at the end of the season. You don't have a whole lot else to play for. You already got a bowl game. So why not give Nico some experience? But then again, it's one more regular season game. And we don't know what Joe's going to do. He could opt out of the bowl game. I don't see him doing that. I think that he'll stick around just because of his allegiance to Tennessee. I mean, he stayed this long. Why do you go ahead and leave in a bowl game? I think that he would stay there for his teammates. It's not like he's going to be a top draft pick or anything.
I don't think he's a draft pick, period.
You might be right on there, unless it's one of those situations like with Anthony Richardson where the scouts see his upside behind it. But, then again, he hasn't lived up to that hype that everyone gave him at the beginning of the year. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I think that at this point you kind of stick to what you're doing. Probably an unpopular opinion. I've seen a lot of people calling for Nico, but I mentioned I've got a little soapbox that I want to go on. I won't spend too much time on, but I've seen a lot of people that are frustrated with Josh Heupel. And I will say, and I'm going to ask you, are there decisions that you feel the coaching staff, especially Josh Heupel, has made this year that have been questionable?
I'm gonna just give you a short answer. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. There's some that I have had questions about, but I'm also going to go back. Are there questions that you had about Jeremy Pruitt there?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Butch Jones?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
probably the worst was Butch Jones.
So there were questions about all of them, but I've got these stats pulled up right here, printed off that I want to read out. So, not including Philip Fulmer, the last few head coaches for Tennessee. Lane Kiffin, we didn't get a whole lot of, I guess, insight on what he would have done as a head coach because he was only here for that 1 year and left. But
right.
But
Lane Kiffin's 1 year was very similar to Josh Heupel's first year.
Exactly. It was eerily similar. He had a 7-6 year. He went 4-4 in the conference.
Yep.
Derek Dooley. He was here for 3 years. His overall record was 15-21. He was 4-19 in the conference.
Hang on. So before you do this, because I know what you're doing, I think I know what you're doing. Are you trying to say that because Josh Heupel's first 3 years are better than the previous 4 coaches that it's considered okay to be mediocre?
I'm not going to say that. I just want to I want to show these stats right here and then kind of compare these coaches as far as how their record went or how their tenure went at Tennessee.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
Right. So Butch Jones, he was there for 2013 to 2017, coached in 51 games. He was 34-27. He had a good record overall.
Josh Dobbs had that.
Yes,
Josh Dobbs had that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Josh Dobbs did. 14-24 in the conference over those years.
Terrible. Yep. And lost to Vanderbilt twice, 3 times.
Twice, yeah.
Twice, yeah.
Jeremy Pruitt, of course, some of these were vacated, so that's why his record looks a lot worse than it is. But he still wasn't good. He was here for 3 years. He was 5-19, 2-16 in the conference. Josh Heupel through 28 games so far. He is 20-8 and is 10-6 in the conference. That could be a lot better, but when you compare to these other coaches, it's no question that Josh Heupel is a better coach. Now, I'm not saying that going forward that these stats right here mean that Josh Heupel is going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy that turns everything around. And I've seen a lot of people talk about his career at UCF as a head coach. You know, he took over for
started up high and just kind of steadily declined.
Yeah, but you also add in the COVID year there. Everybody struggled. He had the COVID year there, and he still was over 500 that year.
Yeah,
I think that Josh Heupel is the guy for Tennessee right now. I really do. Yeah. I did not have this feeling with any of the other coaches, and you've got to expect a down year this year after the year that Tennessee had last year, because they overachieved in both of his first 2 years. You went from 7-6 to 11-2.
Yeah, insane jump.
And then at the beginning of the season, I know me and you predicted Tennessee to go 10-2, but how many predictions did you see out there of Tennessee going 8-4 or 9-3?
I mean, 9-3. 9-3 was the general prediction, and that was losses to Georgia, Alabama, and then you kind of had a coin flip between A&M and Florida. That was kind of like the two biggest other, and that's why 8-4 and 9-3 were so popular, is because everybody knows in history, and we don't beat Florida that often, and they were absolutely right. I don't know if a lot of people are necessarily saying Josh Heupel is the problem.
I think a lot of people saying that. I have.
See, I don't think so. I think there needs to be some coaching changes, assistance wise. Willie Martinez, bro, he's got to go. Tim Banks, I have questions. I do. Now I get it. Defense has played better this year than they have, like, the last, 7 years. But back-to-back games where you're giving up 35 plus, and the offense ain't scoring, but these last 2 games, it's not like the offense. I've been defending the defense a lot of times when we give up 40 points, because so many times there's a scoop and score, or we turn the ball over on our own side of it. That hasn't really happened the last. Yeah, because when we turned the ball over against Missouri, we were on their side of the field.
Tennessee yesterday didn't even turn the ball over once.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, the defense is actually giving that up now. And when you're blitzing as much as they were yesterday, which I love to see, you can't play a soft zone. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to man press when you're blitzing 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that sometimes they were. And, it's almost like we were wanting to be aggressive, but wouldn't actually throw the freaking kitchen sink. Like, we were kind of like reserved by being aggressive. Like, and at the end of the day, you see what happened. I do think there needs to be coaching changes. I'm not going to sit here and say Josh Heupel is not the guy. I think that's redundant. That's stupid. That's ignorant. But I do think that we were supposed to have a down year this year. Not supposed to. That's a bad reference, but it was expected. The problem is, my point is, the losses that we have been so bad. Like, they're not even close games. It's like our team just lays down and just takes it. That is, I think, more of a question mark on the coaching staff than anything, because, we played hard in the first half of Bama game, but dude, we folded in the second half. We were lucky it was only another 30 minutes, because I promise you Bama would have scored another 40. But I think that's the issue there.
I could be right. I think you're right on that, but I also think that there is not a real big player leadership out there. Last year you had Hendon Hooker at the helm on offense. That he was 100% that leader out there. You had Jeremy Banks on defense. He was that vocal leader. He was that guy that everybody looked to. And, you don't really have that this year. You got Joe Milton. You expected to be that guy, but he's not that. He doesn't have that same I won't say mentality, but he doesn't have the same leadership qualities that Hendon Hooker does. Aaron Beasley, he doesn't have those same qualities that Jeremy Banks does. I do think that Keenan Pili was going to be that guy before he got hurt. So I think
which is why that loss hurt really bad. Yeah.
Yes, that's why it did hurt really bad. So I think that's part of it, because you look at we'll just take Michigan, for example. Without their head coach, they are still having lots of success because of the player leadership that they have on that field. And I just don't think that Tennessee has that. And I think that is a big issue. But I also agree with you. I think that there does need to be some staff changes going into next year. I mean, it's 3 years in, and you're seeing a lot of the same problems that you saw from game 1 of season 1 under Josh Heupel.
I like the Michigan reference there, but also Tennessee's players could beat University of Tennessee, Southern University, junior high school, state, community college, whatever you name it. I mean, Michigan's literally only played like one competitive game. They almost lost to Maryland, dude. But yeah, I mean, I get your point. I'm the verbal leaders on this team are not necessarily not who you would think, because Joe Milton's one of them. The problem with Joe Milton being a verbal leader, not that there is really a problem. I mean, you want your quarterback to be that, but the problem is he's not that superstar player. So he's a verbal leader in the huddle and at practices and whatnot, but he's not necessarily backing it up on the field. Now, he's played great at times, I guess statistically, but like when you watch the games, you just know he's not making the right read, or overthrowing somebody. Like he had several yesterday that was just like, what the crap, dude. But you know who the second most verbal leader is? And I know this because when they were doing the huddle and breaking it down, I actually watched him yell at the team, get them pumped up. Just take a guess who you would think. And no, he's not a starter. And he's arguably not even second string. So guess who the next verbal leader is on this team?
You got me on this one. I was going to say Nico, but you said he's technically not even second string. So maybe
I said arguably not even second string. Don't even think quarterback's here. Dylan Sampson.
I can see
the
that.
Sophomore.
I can see that.
He is literally the second biggest vocal leader on this team. He's a sophomore running back that's arguably third string on this team. And that's your leadership. Now, that's not a knock to Dylan Sampson. Please do not twist my words. I'm just saying you've got to have more. You've got to have bigger dudes on both sides of the ball be verbal leaders for this team, so that when you do make a boneheaded play, you're sitting there slapping them on the back of the helmet like, hey, man, forget it. Line up, play the next play. You're not seeing that. Like last year, you've seen it a lot with Byron Young. You've seen it with Jeremy Banks. Jeremy Banks would freaking get on to somebody. Yeah. But as good as freaking Aaron Beasley is, he's not that guy for some reason. I don't know why. But I do have to talk about winners, man. God dang, that Bell kid, I didn't even know who he was. I'll be honest. But he threw, I think he caught one. He might have even rushed for a touchdown. It was weird because Georgia did exactly what I thought Tennessee needed to do. And that was kind of come out with these trickery, misdirection plays. No, Georgia was doing that, and they were capitalizing on it. I mean, that play where the running back or the wide receiver Bell threw that touchdown, we crashed so hard on that sweep that dude was just wide open. But Georgia, man, they're just proving everybody wrong. I mean, I've seen so many people, which they shouldn't have, because I think that hurt Tennessee a lot, is, the one true game that, Georgia played on the road was against Auburn, and we all seen how much they struggled. Thanks, douchebags, because they came out firing against Tennessee, brother. I don't know. That just, wow. Georgia, Alabama in a couple of weeks is going to be fun to watch.
I've been saying it for the last few weeks. Georgia, the way that they're playing now, they've got everybody back and healthy. Now, Ladd McConkey didn't play much yesterday. They said
didn't play at all, actually.
He he got to the game, started stretching and all that, and had a lot of stiffness in his back. You know, he's been having issues with that back all year. But other than that, they were healthy, and the way that they have been playing together these last few weeks, I don't see any team in the nation beating them. Even Alabama. Now, Alabama, and we'll get to them here in just a minute. That's our next game we're going to talk about. Alabama is playing lights out here the last few weeks too, but even Alabama at their best, if Georgia is playing their best, I think it's still a 10-point difference.
Oh, wow. I'm not going to.
If both teams are playing at their best, now that means both of them have to be playing almost mistake-free.
Yeah.
I think it's a 10-point difference. I'm not going to predict that. I'm going to say that game is going to be decided within a touchdown. But I think both teams at their best, Georgia is 10 points better than Alabama.
I mean, they're both good, man. They're both good. I would say that Bama has more flaws than Georgia. I would say that. Yeah. But I do think when Bama's clicking, their potential is probably just as high as Georgia's when they're clicking. I mean, but Tennessee, man, I do want to talk about just the overall, I guess, outlook of the team. You know, they fought a 7-4, and this is going to hurt to say, but we actually have a losing record right now in the SEC. We're 3-4 in the conference. Mm-hmm. Back-to-back losses by 30-plus points. Is this a team in give-up mode?
I don't think so because of the effort that Tennessee, especially on defense, still played with. I know that the defense necessarily didn't play good yesterday, but they were still flying around yesterday, and that was for the most part. There were still times, but that was for the most part one of the best tackling games I've seen Tennessee have. There was still moments where, you know, there was broken tackles, but there was a lot of times where they would hit that guy and wrap him up, and, you know, where you would see players in the past for Tennessee, especially in that secondary, just try to knock the crap out of somebody and wouldn't wrap up. I saw a lot more of that yesterday than I have in the past.
I will say somebody that stepped up really early in the game. Now he did make some mistakes as the game played on, but I mean, who doesn't? Andre Turrentine. Yes. He came up on a sweep and just blew it up for like a 2 or 3 yard loss and just beat the blockers out there on the edge. That was a really good flash in the pan type of play that kind of showed you, hey, this guy's got potential. Now that's a transfer from Ohio State that's just not really clicked. But his opportunity was called. He made a big play, and who knows, maybe we'll see more of him in the future. I think he is going to be, you know, in the rotation for sure next year with some guys leaving. Like I guess Danico Slaughter's a senior, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, Danico Slaughter, Jalen McCullough, Warren Burrow.
Yeah. So Turrentine's going to have to step up, man. And, you know, like you said, they made some plays. They were flying around. I'm not going to say they played good. You give up 38 to anybody, I'm not going to say you play good. But at the end of the day, the offense has to help the defense. And the fact that if we can sustain a drive and not go 3 and out, man, our defense, once again, was on the field so much in the first and second quarters. That just can't happen. That can't happen. I don't know. I think the offense may have only ran 7 plays in the first quarter because we went and we scored the very first play and then went 3 and out.
Yep, you're right on that.
I mean, that just can't happen, dude. But again, this was an outcome that was very expected. I said it, dude, I wish I'd have bet money on this game because I said Neyland Stadium would be empty by the fourth quarter. My God, was I right, dude? I mean, there was nobody left. I think CBS did like an aerial view in the fourth quarter when you could, and like, dude, that was embarrassing. But, you know, we stayed till about 8 minutes left. And then my wife was like, I'm really cold. And I'm like, yeah, they're not putting in Nico either. So I guess we can go ahead and leave. And then, I will say the traffic was pretty nice leaving. It wasn't that bad.
You did get to see Smokey 11 yesterday too.
I did what?
You got to see Smokey 11 yesterday too.
I did. I think that was Smokey 11. My mom was making me doubt it. She was like, that's not Smokey 11. I'm like, yeah, it is. Smokey 10 was like way bigger and like looked older. Like the dog at the ball walk looked like a younger dog. I'm like, I'm pretty positive that's Smokey 11. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. But
and we'll be wrong.
That's exactly right. But let's wrap that thing up, man. CBS Game of the Week. Georgia's 11-0, 8-0. They're rolling. They're going to take on Georgia Tech, which will be a warm-up game for the SEC championship in a couple weeks. And, hats off to them, man. They are by far the best team in the nation. I stand by that.
And the last thing I have, shout out to Georgia. I mean, they just tied the SEC record yesterday for most consecutive wins in a row at 28. You can take a guess at who has whose record they just tied with that.
Bama.
Yep.
And Bama had 2 different streaks of 28. Did you know that?
And they also had one of 27.
And maybe it's the 27 one. I was going to say both the streaks of 28 are not under Nick Saban.
Yeah, the 27 one was under Nick Saban. The other 2 were under Bear Bryant. But yeah, Georgia's going to break that record this weekend.
Bear Bryant was built by General Robert Nealon. I'm just throwing that out. Just throwing that out there. All right. No, I'm joking.
Bear Bryant never did beat Robert Nealon. So
no, he didn't. And Bear Bryant will even admit that everything he learned was from Robert Nealon. So I'm just throwing that out there. No, I'm joking.
Well,
so basically what we're saying is Tennessee built Bama. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. But speaking of Bear Bryant, Alabama yesterday played against Chattanooga. They won 66-10. Not a whole lot to take away from this game other than Alabama took care of business, and Ty Simpson got to get in yesterday and play some, and he didn't look bad.
He didn't. Did you watch this game by chance?
I watched the third quarter of it. I spent the first half because I was real interested in the Mississippi State game. So I watched the first half of that one, but I did watch the third quarter of this one when Ty Simpson was in. And
so Ty Simpson's stat line, and everybody's talking about it, so I'm gonna do the same. His rushing stat is 1 attempt for 78 yards, and he should have had a touchdown. However, numbnuts, he dropped the ball at the half-yard line. And if you watch the replay of it, dude, Nick Saban doesn't even look at him. In fact, Ty Simpson may hit the transfer portal. It was not a easy scene. Like, if you put yourself in his position and you're right next to Nick Saban and that happens, because after the review, it's like, hey, and the referee said it so almost as if the referee didn't want to say it, but he had to say it because it's the fact. Because the referee was like, after evidence, or there was evidence showing that that Ty Simpson dropped the ball at the half-yard line, bro. When he said that, Ty Simpson dropped his helmet, and Nick Saban just kind of was like, you dumbass. But it wasn't that big of a deal. They scored the very next play, I think. Dude, it was a blowout. But again, we all knew that was coming. They're going to play Auburn next week. Which is always a big rivalry. I don't think it's going to be much of a competition because we'll talk about that later. But again, you're talking about the top 2 teams in the SEC about to square off in 2 weeks. How, as a Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, how do you keep these teams locked in for this week's game, knowing that your season rides on next week?
I don't think that Nick Saban's got to worry about keeping Alabama locked in for this Iron Bowl. I think that these guys know that anything can happen in this game. They've seen it in the past, especially with it being at Jordan-Hare. And I think that the personality that Kirby Smart has and just his uncanny ability to somehow motivate his teams that they're going to go 7-5, even though that people are saying they're going to go 7-5 when they're obviously going to be undefeated, win another national championship. I don't think that there's going to be any problems for Kirby Smart to motivate his team against Georgia Tech. But one thing I have about Alabama that I do want to touch on, we talked a time or two this year about the special teams issues that Alabama has in the return game with Kool-Aid McKinstry. In the past few years, there's been times where, they've dove after balls that they shouldn't have, like in the Tennessee game last year. Kool-Aid has also muffed a few punts this year, and he muffed one yesterday. And Saban jerked him out after that and put in freshman Caleb Downs, his first attempt at a return yesterday, 85-yard return for a touchdown. And he was making guys miss left and right. He absolutely embarrassed the Chattanooga punter on a juke move. And I think that Alabama has found their new return man. And if that's the one weakness that Alabama had on this team, they just filled it.
Well, Caleb Downs has been talked about all offseason as the most talented freshman secondary player, in the nation. And he's living up to that. He's had the starting role at Alabama since the very first game of the week or of the year. And now you're starting to see him, how electric he is with the ball in his hands too. Kind of reminds you of a D Williams type of player.
Yeah.
That, for Caleb Downs, it's another opportunity to give him the ball, because he's not an offensive player, kind of like D Williams. He's not either. But you're seeing us and how we're begging to get D Williams the ball more because let's face it, on kickoffs, nobody's returning the ball when everybody's good enough to kick it out of the end zone. So hats off to Bama to open up a little bit, not make so many promises to the players and not afraid to hurt feelings, to make changes to better the team, if you know what I'm saying. But and shout out to Caleb Downs for taking advantage of that opportunity. I mean, that's a big deal. I know it's against Chattanooga, but it's not about it being against Chattanooga. It's about him setting the foundation down. Now he's going to have the confidence to do it in the future against Auburn and against Georgia. So
absolutely. So
let's
next game that we have on the schedule, we have Mississippi State and Southern Miss, and this is one going in that we kind of talked about. Well, you did a little bit more than I did about a possible upset spot, and that's why I was so interested in this game, especially the way it started out. Southern Miss took the lead to start the game, and Mississippi State
carried that into the first quarter.
Yeah, Mississippi State was struggling at the beginning of this game.
No, I want to shout out Mississippi State, man. I mean, with all the negativity around the program the last week or two, for them to come back out and Southern Miss is not good. Don't get me wrong. But this was a perfect kind of layover spot for Mississippi State to come in drowsy, which they kind of did. They kind of got smacked in the mouth, but for them to be able to take that adversity and still score 41 points and win the game ultimately, that showed me a lot, man. I did have my doubts. Apparently it was the wrong team that I had my doubts on. But Mississippi State, big win here. Shout out to, Will Rogers. He didn't have a great day, I'll be honest. 12 of 27 for 144 yards. I mean, just not a great day, but he did have some touchdowns in there.
It was also his first
game. It was Mississippi State's running game. I mean, they kind of controlled the game. You had Pittman with almost 100 yards. You had Davis with 50, Marks with 34, and then you had Mike Wright come in, run the ball a couple times, and a 21-yard run. That was big. Ultimately, not much more to take from it. I didn't really watch the game play by play because there was other games on, but I was very shocked to see the final score on this one. But hats off to Mississippi State.
I do want to throw something out there that you brought up a few weeks ago, and I don't think that we're necessarily right, but I do want to kind of throw this bone out here and give you a bone on this. So, Will Rogers, this was his first game back from injury, and it's the game after Zach Arnett gets fired. And you brought it up a few weeks ago. Do you think Zach Arnett and Will Rogers were kind of button heads or disagreeing a little bit, and maybe that's why Will Rogers wasn't coming back in time? Or was it this shoulder injury really kept him out as long as it has? Me personally, I think that it was a shoulder injury, but it is kind of it's kind of fun to think about that maybe them two didn't really get along, and Will Rogers was kind of sitting out because of that.
I'm not gonna really. I mean, I could see it if you talk about like the human element of the game, like Will Rogers just kind of having spite on the head coach. I've had a head coach like that in my high school where playing football just wasn't fun under him. In fact, I sat my junior year because it just wasn't the guy for me. And kind of took away the fun in the sport. I think Will Rogers may have been going through that, but then I also know that this is his last season. I don't think he would really waste an opportunity, regardless how badly he hates the situation. Because I don't think he has another year left. I don't think he has a COVID year.
No, he's done after this year.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't think he would have wasted an opportunity if he had it, just out of spite. So I'm a lean that this was due to the injury. I think it's just a big coincidence that he's coming back when Zach. But now I will say this: I've always said it. I don't think they do get along. So I think this was I think it's kind of a little bit of both, really. I mean, I don't think Will Rogers really liked Zach Arnett, not even in the slightest, to be honest with you. And, I mean, anybody could really see that. I mean, let's just be honest. You had a defensive-minded head coach coming into Will Rogers who has been so heavy offense, so big pass play type, and then it just completely flipped on its head. That's not what Will Rogers signed up for when he came back. I can promise you that. So, but let's move on to the next game, and kind of an ugly one, sort of, until the second half. But UL Monroe went into Oxford and was really competitive for the first half.
Yeah, the first half it was 7-3 at halftime, and I did not watch any of this game, but Ole Miss kind of sleptwalk coming into this game a little bit. Third quarter, they came out and they scored 3 touchdowns and blew it wide open, and then added another one in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I kind of flipped over there for a minute, just kind of see what was going on, and then I was like, well, I kind of want to watch this Mississippi State game just to see if Mississippi State gets it going, because at that time it was still a decent game against Southern Miss. But yeah,
you want to know what's crazy about this game?
What's that?
Quinson Judkins was shut down. 18 runs for 65 yards and couldn't find the end zone. In fact, one of those runs were 20 yards. So let's just say 17 runs, right, for 45 yards. And I know you can't take away that one. I get it. That's part of the game that's in there. But, dude, I mean, just credit to ULM's, I guess, rush defense. They shut him down, which is kind of eye-opening. Maybe that's just the offensive line thinking that they were going to be able to move them around, kind of sleptwalk like you mentioned. But at the end of the day, you're still talking about one of the SEC's best running backs just not having a day at all.
And really, it was the entire run game that was shut down. I mean, Ole Miss only ran for 127 yards yesterday. Jackson Dart had to throw for 310, and Spencer Sanders, when he came in, threw for 61. So they threw for a total of 371 yards yesterday just to beat ULM.
And 4 tutties. I mean, they only had 1 rushing touchdown. In a game where you would think that would be, padding some stats, right? But no, quite the opposite, really. They had to throw the ball to beat UL Monroe. But at the end of the day, they did it. But so credit to them.
You know what I take away from this game after looking at those stats right there?
What's that?
So Ole Miss's 2 losses on the year are to who? They're to Alabama and to Georgia.
Georgia.
The two best teams in the conference. They didn't do a lot of things well in those games, but what I take away from this is they're more than likely going to get a New Year's Six bowl or get a really high bowl, meaning they're going to play against a good team. So I think if that team that they play tries to take away one or the other of these of the running game or the passing game for Ole Miss, the other one can take over in that game. So, for instance, I think the ULM came into this game yesterday, wanted to shut down the run game, make them pass the ball, and that's exactly what Ole Miss did to win the game. And I truly think that if a team comes in wanting to shut down Ole Miss's passing game, their running game can win the game for them. That's what I take away from this game is Ole Miss, they can do it either way.
Found ways to do it regardless. I got you. You know what's crazy is like Ole Miss's 2 losses are to Alabama and Georgia. You got Missouri's 2 losses are to Georgia, LSU. Just hypothetically, who wins between Missouri and Ole Miss? You're talking about the number 3, number 4 teams in the SEC.
I think if you were to, this is neutral site, correct?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say it's a bowl game and it's Ole Miss versus Missouri, which I would watch that.
I think sitting here today, I would give a slight, and I mean a slight edge to Missouri because their defense is better than Ole Miss's defense.
Okay, fair. All right. I would watch that 100%.
If you're going strictly based on offense, I'm going to take Ole Miss in the game. But when you add in both elements of it, I think that slight edge goes to Missouri.
But see, this is why the SEC is better than the Big Ten. I mean, you got Alabama, Georgia, which is, let's just say that's your Michigan, Ohio State. But then you have Ole Miss and Missouri and LSU, which would kind of be like your Penn State of Big Ten. And then Big Ten's nobody else. They do have a flash in the pan in the SEC West in Iowa. But let's just be real.
Iowa doesn't have an offense.
That's what I'm saying. Let's be real. I mean, they're only playing good.
Speaking of that game,
good. Go ahead.
Speaking of Iowa, did you see what the score of that Iowa-Illinois game was at one time?
15-13? What was it? I think that was the final.
That was the final. The score at one point yesterday was 3-2. The game started off 2-0 because Iowa got a safety. Then Illinois ended up kicking a field goal and it made it 3-2.
But you see the point I'm trying to make, right?
Yes,
like
yes, I see
we just have more top teams, if that makes sense. Like, because obviously at the end of the day, the conference is going to beat each other up, but that's in every conference. That's why you play conference games. But, even after that, you still have multiple teams that are right there in that high tier 2 type, level. And I'm not even putting Tennessee there because they don't deserve to be there this year.
Tennessee right now is in tier 3 of the SEC.
And the only reason, but they're high tier 3, because the only reason I'm going to say that is because people will forget this, and that's okay. 3 of Tennessee's 4 losses right now, those 3 teams are in the top 10. Yes. Missouri, Alabama, Georgia. We've only had 1 loss, and it was an ugly one, to Florida, right, at the beginning of the season. Now, the other thing that kind of sucks is all those losses were not really competitive. I mean, our most competitive game was against Alabama. But, at the end of the day, you're still facing – I mean, you give Penn State that schedule. Give Michigan. I'll even throw in Michigan because they haven't played anybody. I'll be honest. I just don't think they're near as dominant as they appear once they, they're just not being tested. But that's my little rant there. We can move on.
Yep. Next game, won't spend a lot of time on this one either. Texas A&M and Abilene Christian, and this is another one where Texas A&M kind of sleptwalked a little bit in the first half. It was 17-7 at the half, 7-7 at the end of the first. And in the second half, there was a targeting called that was called on Abilene Christian on a hit on quarterback Jalen Henderson, and Jalen kind of got up a little bit slowly, and targeting ended up being overruled there. They went and reviewed it and determined it was not targeting. It looked like it to me though. But they immediately jerked out Jalen Henderson because he is their third string quarterback right now. And I mean, he's not playing bad. But a shout out to Marcel Reed as well, the backup quarterback that came in for Texas A&M after that. He is actually a product of, I believe, Brentwood Academy in Nashville. His very first collegiate pass was a 13-yard touchdown pass.
Love to see it. It looks to be like his only attempt.
It was his only attempt. I was looking to see if he tried running the ball. Does not look like he did. I don't see a rush for him anywhere. But in the end, Texas A&M ended up taking care of business. Kind of off from the game. Well, do you have any notes on this game right here?
Yeah, I did see a highlight. So shout out. They apparently had a kickoff team full of walk-ons, and
I forgot about that.
They actually generated a turnover. So I've never seen that level of excitement and anything from a kickoff team, but man, they deserved it, man. Those guys are out there practicing just as much as the guys that get a scholarship, get their schooling for free. No, they're paying for their school and they're doing the practicing. And to see them have their moment and they took advantage of it. That was pretty cool to see, man. That was going viral yesterday.
Yeah, they generated a turnover, but it ended up being overruled because the guy's forearm was actually down before that second tackle.
Oh, whatever. I don't care.
But I mean, still, I mean, it was an awesome moment seeing that. I had forgotten to bring that up. I'm glad that you did. But real quick, I don't want to spend but just a minute on this. Who do you think that Texas A&M should hire to replace Jimbo?
So I actually had a really good feeling on this one, but I think it just came out that reports it's not going to happen. I really thought they were going to take the Lions head coach, Dan Campbell. He's a Texas A&M alum, and you could see what he'd done with the Lions organization and how he's been able to flip that thing around. I really thought that's who they were going to. And he admitted that they did reach out to him. So I was on the right track there. But now you kind of have to sit back and kind of zoom out a little bit, because I wouldn't have ever thought that Texas A&M would have made this coaching move without knowing who their guy was. Like, I would have thought they would have pretty much done a handshake deal behind the table or behind the scene to basically say, all right, when we pull the trigger, you're the guy. That's actually not the case. I don't think as of right now A&M has a single clue who their head coach is, which is kind of crazy to me that they would make a move this big based on their program being stuck in neutral. And the reason why I say that is because, you make a move that big when your program is in reverse. I mean, this program's in neutral. You could have taken your time with this. Instead, they elected to do the opposite. They made sure they had the money to do it, and then they did it. I just really would have thought they would have had their guy. I know that there's some speculation about some other current active head coaches. I mean, I've even heard Dabo's name being thrown out there, which
he shut that one down.
That doesn't even make sense. I mean, he's got an easier schedule and probably just as many resources out in Clemson as he would in A&M. Like, that would almost be a lateral, if not a worse situation that he's in right now at Clemson. So that made no sense to me. I think a decent option, and this is going to be a wild card, but it's just an idea that I had. Eli Drinkwitz. Now, the reason why he probably won't do it is I think I don't know if he went to school to Missouri, but but to see what he's done with that program that actually does have less resources, I think that he could possibly take over A&M. And as much as I hate Eli Drinkwitz, that proof is in the pudding. I mean, he's doing it not with a superstar quarterback. Cook's good, don't get me wrong. But Jimbo probably wouldn't have done anything that he's done without a superstar quarterback. And that's the mistake A&M did, is they went all in on this guy because he won a national championship, but he had a great quarterback. Which I guess in the end of the day, he recruited the great quarterback. I understand that. But at the end of the day, that if I were to choose, and this is no insider information whatsoever, this is me kind of like an outsider looking in. Missouri, unfortunately, they're capped by circumstances out of their control that'll probably prevent them from being a national championship contender for a decent amount of time. I mean, you got to go through Georgia. Let's say you make it through Georgia. Now you got to go through Alabama, right? Now, at A&M, you would have to do the same thing, but you would have the money and the resources to get better recruiting classes than Missouri can. And you have more to offer. Missouri doesn't have a big facility. They can only seat 60,000 people at their home games. All that leads into you're missing 40,000 in ticket sales compared to like an A&M or a Tennessee when it comes to home games. And that's 40,000 tickets not sold, right? That's less money you're making every weekend. So that was my thought process, but my kind of like blew up when Dan Campbell came out in the Detroit Lions press conference and said that he wasn't doing it.
I did see something yesterday that more than likely they will not get a major Power 5 coach just because the money that they just spent to get rid of Jimbo.
Stop. Robert's in the chat. Robert is in the chat. What's up, Robert?
Robert, glad to see you, man. We're so glad that you're here with us today.
So. Bro, say good morning. What time zone are you in, my guy? Come on now. Hey, but it is a good Sunday. It's great to have you back, but we missed you last week.
Yeah, we sure did. But
all right, go ahead.
Continuing what I was saying there. So because of the money they just spent on Jimbo's buyout, that doesn't leave a whole lot that you can pay a major Power 5 coach without them taking a pay cut. So I think that they're going to go with maybe a group of 5 coach or some up-and-comer. And the name that I've seen a lot is, I forget what his name is, the guy from UTSA. He's big on that right there. And actually, they showed the press conference after the game Friday night that UTSA had. So it was their senior night. They got a big win, and somebody brought up the Texas A&M job, and he goes, man, it's sad that we've got 18 seniors on this team just played their hearts out and got this win, and all you want to talk about is the Texas A&M job.
Yeah.
So he never really gave an answer on that, but I know that he has interviewed for it. He's come out and said that as well. I think
is that Mike Elko? Because I've heard that name a lot.
Mike Elko is the guy at Duke, and I said that name. I think that would be a good job because once again, you mentioned the Dabo thing maybe being a lateral move. I think Mike Elko at Duke, that is making a jump up. But at the same time, you can win at Duke even with Florida State and Clemson and all that being bigger schools. I mean, Mike Elko got a win at Clemson or against Clemson this year. So
Yeah.
I think that overall Mike Elko might be better off at Duke, but I think that it'd be worth a conversation for Texas A&M to go talk to Mike Elko.
Sacramento, California. Let's go, Robert. He had some family obligations last week. No worries, man. We forgive you, dude. It's good to have you back, though. I hope all is well with you. And thank you for making the chat lively for us. But we're wrapping up this recap, man. We got several more games to talk about. Let's talk about one that was a head scratcher for everybody, and that is New Mexico State. I mean, just absolutely taking it to Auburn in a game that nobody anticipated, because this was at Jordan-Hare. You just never would have thought this would have happened. I think it was confirmed that Auburn paid New Mexico State $1.7 million.
That's what I saw.
Okay, $1.8 million. Let's just make it worse for them to get their absolute butt kicked.
But I do want to throw you a bone, though, because last week you made mention, after looking back at New Mexico State's schedule and how a lot of their games were closer and stuff. You said, do you think that this could have some interest behind it as far as an upset? And I kind of shot that down because, like you said, the game was at Jordan-Hare. I didn't think that it would happen. Auburn's been playing really well as of late, and then there we go. New Mexico State 31-10 over Auburn in Jordan-Hare.
My problem with that game was when I was, predicting it is I was kind of SEC biased. I don't want any SEC team to lose to a game like this, right? But I was looking at New Mexico. I mean, they were sitting there at 8-3. I get it. It's Conference USA, but dude, they were 6-1 in their conference. Auburn was, 3-4 in their conference, and they were 6-4. They were looking okay, right? That's why I went with Auburn at the end. But I just knew that if you're a program and you're just facing, let's just not even look at the record. You just look at New Mexico State and you're like, oh yeah, that's a scrimmage. We got this easy dub. But then you fail to realize that team knows how to win, and I think that's what happened, man. Auburn came out, got punched in the mouth immediately. 7-0 after the first quarter. They went into halftime and they were still losing 10-7. And then what does New Mexico State do in the third quarter? Score another touchdown. And then just Auburn couldn't respond. And that was head scratching, man. I didn't realize that this was happening when it happened, because I was at the Tennessee game. And one of my buddies posted in like the third or fourth quarter. He was like, yeah, this is a loss, but at least we're not Auburn. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean, we're not Auburn? So I started doing some research, or tried to. And when I say research, I mean Facebook, because that's my go-to. And I seen another thing, and it wasn't really what I needed to hear, but it was just like another knock on Auburn. Like, man, it sucks to be Auburn. Or I bet Hugh Freeze is, regretting his coaching decisions. And I'm like, what are they talking about? So finally, I just looked it up, and I seen 31-10 loss final. And I'm like, oh my God. It kind of blew me away a little bit, but I didn't watch the game. But just, as a head coach, knowing that you have to play Bama next week.
Yeah, I didn't watch this game either, but I can tell you where this game was won and lost. Auburn ran for 65 yards yesterday, and that is where Auburn has to win games, is running the football. So New Mexico State did exactly what they needed to. They forced Auburn to try to throw the ball.
No. Hang on. Read out the rushing stats one more time. How many yards?
65.
Okay, and that's with Peyton Thorne having 38.
Yeah, 17 carries for 38 yards. Jarquez Hunter, who has had himself a nice few weeks, 8 carries for 27 yards.
New Mexico State didn't give up anything on the ground, dude. That is insane.
And, shout out to Peyton Thorne. He didn't have himself a bad day through the air. He was 15-19, 148 yards and a touchdown. He had better stats yesterday than Joe Milton did, unfortunately. But when you only run for 65 yards, and that is where your strength is on the season, you're not going to have a lot of success.
Makes you wonder why they didn't throw it more. I mean, 15 of 19, they only threw it 19 times, and they were down. Like, you're in obvious passing situations. Peyton Thorne didn't throw interceptions. Like, I don't know why they didn't try to throw the ball more. I mean, he was accurate with the ball, like you mentioned. Peyton Thorne, by the way, had 38 of those rushing yards on 17 attempts.
Yeah.
It's not even like he ran it twice to get they just couldn't do anything on the ground, but for some reason kept forcing it. But now I'm looking at this, man. They didn't run a lot of offensive plays.
Yeah,
It almost looks like New Mexico State just controlled the ball, dude. Like Peyton Thorne had 19 passing attempts, and then rushing attempts they had 20.
They had 26. They ran 45 total plays yesterday.
Yeah, so New Mexico State just
time of possession. New Mexico State 38-50, Auburn 21-10.
Oh,
and almost like Tennessee time of possession because Tennessee, because of their offense, never has
when it's clicking.
Yeah, when it's clicking, they never have a whole lot of time on the time of possession. But because when it's clicking, they normally score points. Tennessee can win ball games. That Auburn only having 21 minutes of time of possession yesterday, that's not a recipe for success for them because that's not how their offense runs.
I will thank you for throwing me a bone, by the way, even though I predict the wrong team on this. I did point out that New Mexico State's quarterback could be dangerous, and he was. Let's be honest. The dude threw for 19 of 28, 201 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And he might have even ran. Yeah, he ran 8 times for another 35 yards. He didn't have a touchdown, but my man was exactly what I thought he could have been if he played to his full potential. And Auburn, unfortunately, was on the bad end of that. But Hugh Freeze, I guess the good thing for him, he did win 3 in a row before this. So they're going bowling regardless.
Yeah, they're going
bowling. That's just not the way you want to end the season, especially when you just kind of assume that you're going to lose next week. So to lose 2 in a row, which I shouldn't say that. I mean, they do have a fighting chance against Alabama. If any team has a chance against Nick Saban, for some reason it's Auburn, even in their bad years. But I just, if we're being real here, if Auburn loses the final 2, I mean, they could have been 7-5 pretty easily, but they overlooked their opponent, and that's what happens, man.
Yep. Moving on, this is another game that I did not watch. This game was on at the same time as a couple other good games, so it got overshadowed. But shout out to Arkansas. Arkansas getting the win yesterday against Florida International, 44-20. KJ Jefferson, he did throw for 3 touchdowns yesterday, but his numbers weren't great. 15 of 28, 187 yards and 3 touchdowns. But when you look, Arkansas ran for 323 yards on the ground, and KJ, he rushed for 90 of those. I'm not sure how you say his name. Isaiah Augustave, I think. He was the leading rusher yesterday, 14 carries for 101 yards.
I think it's Augustave or something like that. I could be completely wrong though. But yeah, no. So I do want to give a shout out to Arkansas. The good win. And it has been confirmed that Sam Pittman will not be fired this year. Their athletic director came out yesterday or today, maybe this morning, and confirmed Sam Pittman will not be fired this year. He's still going to be the man. Now they have made some coaching changes around him. So maybe he's on the warm seat at the beginning of the year next year. But, we were talking about, head coaches being fired at 3.5. Like, that's a good line for it. And I kind of thought that was a great line because I assumed that Sam Pittman was getting pulled this year, which would have put us at 3 coaches. And then a coach that we haven't really talked about because we thought about how good his situation has been, even though I know this segment's about Arkansas. Actually, I'll just save it for the next game because that's who I'm wanting to talk about. But no, Arkansas came out. They got a win over FIU. It's a big win for them just because it's a win. It's a team that's not going bowling. So at this point, make the most of the final games you got. And they did here by doing that. Their defense still wasn't great, but it is what it is. They went in at halftime, I think, up 31-13. So offense was clicking in the second quarter for sure. In fact, they scored 24. Yeah, they scored 24 in the second quarter. So good on them. They kind of, obviously took the foot off the pedal in the second half after that, which you never like to see. But KJ, like you mentioned.
I will say, shout out. One reason that they scored 24 is there was a pick 6 I'm assuming that was in the second quarter, part of the 24 points there. I'm not even going to attempt that first name, but Walcott.
It is.
Arkansas.
Yep. 33-yard interception return. Right on the money. I overlooked that. My bad. But yeah, I mean, so that's good on them though, because as you see in November, man, a lot of teams go down that are not supposed to, and they stayed out of that conversation. So good on them. Big win in Fayetteville, and probably a win that saves Sam Pittman a whole nother year. Let's be honest. If Sam Pittman lost this game, I don't think the athletic director comes out on the next day and says that your job is saved. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. So I know I always say that one game never really determines if you're getting fired or not. I seriously think that game might have been, you're fired or you got another year for Sam Pittman. And I think he won, so he's got another year. And, hats off to him. But again, not a big game. None of us really watched that one. One that was a big game that we did watch 1,000%. Florida about did the unthinkable and beat Missouri in Como. And that's a big no-no. You don't go into Como and win, dude. That's against the rules. But 31-33, Missouri gets a thriller win.
I've got a not so hot take. After this season, Harrison Mevis will have a statue erected of him at Missouri.
The thicker kicker statue, bro. Yes, sir. Real quick, Robert said that he's happy for Sam at Arkansas, and he does think that they'll make some positive coaching changes. And I think he's spot on the money. I think they'll do the right thing around Sam, and hopefully he'll be able to keep cutting on that jukebox and drinking a beer after these wins. But no, I agree with you about Harrison Mevis, man. But now let's be honest. The offense did a great job at not just getting to field goal range on a 4th and 17. And by the way, we just skipped to the end of the game if y'all didn't watch it. 4th and 17, Missouri's not even on Florida's side of the football, and they convert. And that got them into field goal range for Harrison Mevis because basically you just got to cross the 50-yard line. And then, but credit to Missouri because they had about 15 or 16 seconds left, give or take. And they went out. Yeah, and they went out and kept getting yards. So then you're talking about a 50-yard field goal to win it. No, they won it on like a 27-yard field goal because they kept getting 10. Yeah, they just kept getting yards. I mean, hell, I honestly think they could have tried for a touchdown if they really wanted to. But so credit to Missouri in that 2-minute drive because, I mean, it was very possible. It was 4th and 17. And I'm like, dude, Florida just did it. Like, what the crap? Florida's 2 wins this year are against Tennessee and Missouri that are worth talking about, right? And then they've had some ugly losses, but like it kind of reminds you of like South Carolina last year, where they had like a mediocre season, and then they just beat Tennessee and South Carolina, or Tennessee and Clemson, and it's like, well, damn, that made up for everything. And like as a Florida fan, that would have sent you bowling, and you would have beat a top 10 Missouri team that had just beaten Tennessee. So like, yeah, that would have made up for a lot of things, but no, instead. Defense decided to fold. I don't know. I don't know, man. That was crazy. I watched that live, and when they converted on the 4th down, I'm like, yeah, they're winning. Like, it could have been a 70-yard field goal, but they would have won. Like in my mind, after that conversion, it was crazy.
Yeah, Brady Cook yesterday, 20 of 34, 331 yards and a touchdown, and Cody Schrader just kept doing Cody Schrader things. 23 carries, 148 yards, and a touchdown as well. Luther Burden, man, 9 receptions, 158 yards, no touchdowns. And I tell you what the biggest, or one, not the biggest, but one of the biggest plays of the game, though, was the 77-yard pitch and catch to Theo Wees down the sideline for the touchdown. That
Theo Wees turned on the jets on that play, dude. Like, you would have thought he would have just ran out of bounds or something like that. No, he decided to just turn on the turbos, dude. And that was a big play, momentum changing, swing, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that play was electric.
Yeah, it was. Just a big win for. I mean, good teams do what it takes to win, and that's exactly what Missouri did yesterday.
Yeah, and I do want to give credit, dude. Like Florida, for the most part, shut down Schrader. Schrader did have 148 yards, but he had a one long 42-yard run. That if you kind of wipe that away and just look at his average, at that point, you're only talking about 22 attempts for 100 yards, roughly. I mean, they did their job in slowing down Schrader for the most part. And I think that's why you've seen Florida staying around in this ball game. But then what you don't account for is Brady Cook just finding the hidden yardage. I mean, he ended the day with 331 passing yards. And a lot of that was yards after catch. Yak. I mean, his players making plays. You got Theo Wees. You had Luther Burden. Dude, oh my God, what a game. 9 catches for 158 yards. And by the way, he was the guy that caught the ball in that 4th and 17. Made no sense why Florida was just playing soft. I don't know. Like, they're playing the sticks like they're supposed to be, but then don't.
Well, it looked like he was the one guy on the field that wasn't even guarded at the time, and he's the best player on the field other than Cody Schrader. I mean, that's where I questioned a little bit that defense on the 4th and 17, but I was kind of like you. I was like, 4th and 17, man. Florida, they just did it. I mean, I don't know how they pulled it off, and then Luther Burden catches it, and I said the same thing you did. I was like, Missouri is about to kick a field goal and win this game.
Is Missouri not having? Is Missouri not having that kind of like Cinderella story, kind of like Tennessee was having last year? The only difference is, Missouri's, I guess, marquee win, because ours was Alabama, theirs would be Tennessee. I mean, what is their big win?
As far as opponent goes, I would say probably Tennessee, but I would say the way that the game went, it beat that Kansas State game where Missouri.
Well, no, so Kansas State, Kansas State was the hump they had to get over, right? I'm not going to say that was their biggest win, but that is definitely what kind of set the tone and gave the belief in this team. Because in my mind, the Kansas State win was a lot like the Pitt win for us last year, where we got beat by Pitt the year before. Kansas State beat Missouri the year before. Well, then you had to have that belief instilled in the team when you beat that team that beat you last year. That then proves that, hey, you got better from year to year. Now let's go out and win some games. So I agree with you, and it may still be Kansas State as being the biggest win this year. But 1,000%, that game was kind of what got them rolling. Like the belief was at that point instilled in them. LSU came in, and they had a chance to win that game in the 4th quarter, unfortunately through a pick 6. But, at the end of the day, Missouri's kind of having that, America's team type of vibe where everybody's just loving what Eli's doing out there. I hate it. I'll be honest. I'm not a fan, but I'm a Tennessee fan. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Let's mention about Florida, though, because I do have to give some prayers up to Graham Mertz, who was knocked out of the game in the 4th quarter.
What a play.
Max Brown did come in, and he did decent. He was 4 or 5 for 56 yards in that 4th quarter when he came in. But yeah, I mean, Florida did not have a bad day at all. They threw for 239. They rushed for 261. They did what they needed to. Missouri just they pulled it out in the end.
Sometimes when you have the pixie dust, brother, it doesn't matter what the other team does. Florida did some great things, and that Graham Mertz injury kind of sucked because that was such a gutsy run. It was like a 4th and 3 or 4th and 5, and like he knew he was going to be short, so he just lowered the shoulder. And literally, I'm not going to say he ran over them, but let's just say the Missouri guys just fell off of him, and he kept going. And I think it was the second hit that actually broke his collarbone. I'm going to go ahead and call it as I see it. The way he grabbed his shoulder immediately and immediately went to a sling, that's almost a telltale sign for a broken collarbone. I've broken one before. It's not fun. It almost feels like you can't move your shoulder at all. Like this is a natural position you want to go when you break a collarbone, I promise. And so it sucked because that was such a good play, and they were going down the field, and what sucked about it is then the backup quarterback had to come in and they fumble. And Missouri scores. And that you felt like is what lost you the game. But then credit to Florida. They came right back, had a chance. They actually went up after a field goal. And but man, that 2-minute drill by Missouri. And as much as it was a great job by Missouri, Florida's defense cannot give up a 4th and 17 right there. But at the end of the day,
but that's kind of that's things coming back around after that big 4th down conversion that Florida had against Tennessee back in 2015 or whatever. They ended up winning the game.
Yeah. So. Yep.
Sorry, I had to add Tennessee in there somewhere, but
no, you're straight, man. Robert agrees with us or agrees with you as far as Kansas State being the biggest win of Missouri season that kind of, set the tone, like I mentioned, for the season. And they are very well on track, man. I think they have Arkansas next week. We'll talk about that game. On track for a 10-2 season going to a New Year's Six. And that is crazy to think. But let's move ahead. We got 2 games left, and we're well over an hour into the show. We got
real quick. We'll try to keep it short, but I want you to make mention of something that you kind of alluded to last segment about coaches.
Yes.
Billy
Wrong coach, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, wrong coach. Yeah, we're coming up to it. In fact, let's talk about it. Kentucky loses to South Carolina, a coach that we haven't really talked about being on the hot seat because of how good a situation he's been in is Mark Stoops. They literally pay this man $9 million a year to be mediocre, win 8 games a year, and they're happy, right? Well, the problem is Kentucky may not win 7 games this year. They very well could go 6-6, which would be terrible because they've lost most of those games in the second half of the season, which is very Kentucky-ish. I mean, that's what Kentucky does all the time. No, I think the third coach to get fired this year could be Mark Stoops. I mean, if he were to go 6-6 this year after all the hype around Devin Leary, and he's got a couple of sophomore wide receivers that broke out last year, right? In my mind, that's not acceptable even for Kentucky standards. And we've already seen their fan base get pretty upset with Mark Stoops this year, especially losing to Tennessee when they felt like they really had a chance to win. This is one of the coaches outside of Billy Napier. I think Billy Napier, I think he's there. I mean, if there were to be a fourth coach fired this year, I think it is Billy Napier. But Mark Stoops could be. I mean, losing to South Carolina, man. Okay, but not after South Carolina's had the poor season they've had. You can't be the only SEC win. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. They have 3 now. I was going to say you can't be the only SEC win that South Carolina has outside of Vanderbilt. I'm not really sure who else South Carolina beat. I'm so confused on it. Mississippi State. Okay. Okay. So outside the 2 worst teams in the SEC, you were the third win. And I don't know, man. I think this was a very bad loss for Kentucky, very bad loss from Mark Stoops. And that was where I was going earlier with the whole coaches thing. Because I think outside looking in that Mark Stoops has got to be his seat's got to be warming up.
I don't think he gets fired this year, but I do think at the start of next year he is on the hot seat. But talk about winners first. South Carolina, they did just enough to win this game. They scored 10 points in the first quarter and did not score again until the fourth quarter. And that's what ultimately won them the game. Spencer Rattler kept doing what he needed to. He was 19-27, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions again. Spencer Rattler, when we get to the prediction show, it shows the stats for the season. But Spencer Rattler has had himself a season on a bad team.
No, what's crazy is the only way South Carolina could win this game is if Spencer and Leggett connected. And I'll be damned if that's not their only 2 touchdowns is to Leggett. I mean, if you're Kentucky, that makes it even more like it's so head scratching. Robert even said that Kleenex is the new sponsor for Kentucky. Dude, the plan for Kentucky's defense was so clear. If you can't stop Spencer, stop Leggett. Because at the end of the day, if you stop Leggett, that's going to stop Spencer. That's his go-to guy. And guess what you couldn't do? You couldn't stop Leggett. Like, he had 6 catches for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. You got beat by South Carolina's only 2 players. Congratulations, Kentucky. Your job was so easy, and yet you still failed.
But, I'm going to go on the other side of it. South Carolina didn't beat Kentucky because Kentucky beat themselves.
And that's fair. But to prove that, how many rushing yards outside the quarterback did South Carolina have yesterday?
They had, let's see, Mario Anderson ran for 27. Lenore Sellers had 9, so that's 36.
And that's a quarterback.
Yeah. Raswell had
30 yards.
39, and then you had a couple of losses on there. So you really had just 27 yards, 30 yards, something like that, outside the quarterback.
That's it. All you had to do was shut down a wide receiver, and they couldn't do it. And like I know, like Kentucky did beat themselves. You're right on that. And starting with protecting the ball, right? I mean, Devin Leary can't throw interceptions, which he did throw one. I believe there was a fumble, if I'm remembering correctly.
There was 2 fumbles. Devin Leary had a fumble. The ball got knocked out of his hand as he brought it back to throw. Dane Key fumbled it. I think it was after a reception, maybe, or maybe he was.
So you tell what? So the turnover margin was 3-0. Yes, right.
That's where the game was lost right there because the interception that Devin Leary threw was in the end zone. Kentucky had drove right down the field. They were getting ready to score, and then threw an interception in the end zone. And then I know one of the fumbles, it might have been the Devin Leary one. They were driving down the field again, and South Carolina got back there and knocked it out of his hand before he could throw it. So Kentucky had every single opportunity in the world to win this game, and they couldn't do it. South Carolina ended up pulling it out.
I don't know. Oh, by the way, there's a viral video going around about Darude performance Sandstorm. I'll be honest, that was whack. He didn't perform nothing. He was like in a booth, just
I didn't even see
How do you perform an electro song? Like I don't whatever. Anyway, it's going viral because the crowd, the atmosphere, and let's get it. Columbia, South Carolina, Columbia, Missouri too, but they've got some electric nighttime atmospheres, and that was on full display. But I just thought that performance by Sandstorm was kind of whack. I didn't even understand that, but it's not like there was a guy and a guitar and a drum set. Like there was no concert. But anyways, no. At the end of the day, these teams are playing for 5th and 6th spots on the SEC East, and South Carolina actually pulled it out, man.
And a shout out to South Carolina because they just kept their bowl hopes alive. All they have to do is win this weekend, and they could get a bowl game. But it is going to be in their Super Bowl, so I mean
that would be kind of cool. That would be kind of cool, though. All right, let's just broad scope. Let's look at this from an SEC East perspective. If South Carolina can find a way to beat Clemson, you've got 6 out of 7 teams going bowling in the East. No. Florida, no. Florida would have to beat Florida State.
But it's still possible.
But still possible, yes. Yeah, still possible. Which I guess we'll get to our pick segment in a little bit. I got something to say about that.
Last game.
But anyways, yeah, LSU beat the crap out of Georgia State. Nobody wants to talk about that. Jaden Daniels, for some reason, was in the ballgame in the fourth quarter, so he could get his 8th touchdown responsible for it. That ties Joe Burrow's record. So hats off to him, but there's no reason he should have been in the game in the fourth quarter, in my opinion.
Well, it looks like Garrett Nussmeier never even came into the game.
Yeah, I don't know if he was hurt or if they were just sunshine pumping for Jaden Daniels to get the Heisman, which is what I think was happening. Which I don't respect that. I don't respect that. You're either the best player of college football or you're not. Like, don't pump your stats against a team that's way lesser or inferior to make you look like a better player. In my opinion, that is the dumbest thing ever. And I wish that Heisman voters would look at that, but they don't. They look at overall stats, right, throughout the season. But Robert just hit us up with a big question. He said Clemson is playing better. Beamer would have liked to play Clemson 4 or 5 weeks ago. Was that the question? I mean, I think Beamer doesn't care when he plays Clemson. I think that's a battle of South Carolina. I think that's going to be a very
championship.
The fact that state championship shit, that's their Super Bowl. Come on. Let's see. Shane Beamer has a lot to play for. South Carolina has a lot to play for. Man, the fact that they can beat Clemson and for that to be for a bowl game, best believe they're going to be coming out firing on all cylinders. The problem is I do think Clemson's playing their better ball right now, which may not be good for South Carolina because South Carolina's defense is bad. They play good against Kentucky, but Kentucky ain't good. So I don't know. We'll figure it out. But
that's the end of this recap right here, and it's been a long one, but we've had a lot to talk about. Well, let's get right into our Week 13 predictions. This is the last week of the regular season, my guy. It's been a quick season.
It is, and it's rivalry week. Lots to talk about.
Yeah. So let's do a recap real quick over our records last week. Skylar, you only missed one game, and it was that pesky Auburn game against New Mexico State. Unfortunately, I missed 2 games, but that's because I took Kentucky in that South Carolina game, and that one could have gone either way right there. And
stop trying to give yourself credit. I got the win, dude. Stop. Come on.
You did. So now Skylar is sitting at 89-22 on the year. He gained another game. I am sitting at 86-17 on the year. So 3 games back. Let's have this conversation.
Go ahead and crown it. Go ahead. Right there.
Let's have this conversation live real quick. So
oh God, I hate when he does this to me because he's gonna make me look like a bad guy. All right, go ahead.
No, it has nothing to do with that. So is this going to be the last week of our picks, or are we going to do picks for the conference championship games next week and let that be the end of it?
Well, so we're a Vol Fanatic show. We typically talk and recap the Vols and then the SEC. I think we need to let the people make that decision. I think Robert, Sean, anybody listening after the live, what would you guys want us to do? Would you like us to predict? Because I do think that predicting bowl games would be something that's kind of fun to do, but it would also kind of go outside of our niche because we stay inside the SEC. So maybe we could do SEC bowl games if that's something that the people would want. But I'm going to leave that up to the people because at the end of the day, we're still going to continue the show, probably going on to basketball season. Yep. So we're going to be around, and maybe that can just be a segment added onto the basketball show.
Yep. That works. I was just going to throw that out there. So this could possibly be the final week of our predictions.
It's not going to be. Robert already said keep making picks.
Hey, that works for me. I do think that after next week conference championship, we cut it off at that point, but then like do a separate little bowl pick sort of thing. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah. By the way, my conference prediction for the SEC is Bama. By the way.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I know you like that, don't you? All right.
Let's get right into these predictions. Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, I was kind of confused by this because it was a 7:30 kickoff. I'm like, wow, is that at the top of the list? And then I realized that it is being played on Thanksgiving. So go ahead, go for it.
Yep. So we've got the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I am going to take Ole Miss to win this game. It is at Mississippi State, which Starkville sometimes gives Ole Miss some problems, but I don't think that Mississippi State is going to be able to keep up with the high-flying offense that Ole Miss has. So give me the Rebels in this game to win the Egg Bowl.
Well, I agree with you, unfortunately. And no, I'm not just trying to be defensive and protecting the lead. This would be a perfect letdown spot for Lane Kiffin because it's happened before.
It happened last year.
I was going to say it happened last year. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. Unfortunately, I don't think Mississippi State has the ponies on defense, much less offense, to keep up with Ole Miss. And that's even with the undesirable performance by Ole Miss last week, even though they won pretty big. But I do think Quinshon Judkins kind of bounces back here and eclipses 1,000 yards on the season. I think that's solely why I'm picking Ole Miss to win is because I'm expecting him to have 1,000 yards after this week.
All right.
So next game is on the Friday. So a fun week of football. Let me tell you, I'm going to be watching a lot of it. Yeah. It's 4:00 on CBS Eastern. You got Missouri, Arkansas. Now that may not move the needle for a lot of folks because Missouri's having an astounding season. But let's not overlook the rivalry between these two teams. This could be a very low scoring, hard fought game between Missouri and Arkansas. What say you?
I agree with you. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think that both of these defenses are going to force some turnovers. I think ultimately it comes down to I think it comes down to Cody Schrader being the X factor in this game, like it has been the last few games for Missouri. I think that he's going to do what he needs to do on the offensive side of the ball, and Brady Cook's going to keep doing his thing, and Missouri pulls out a close win in this one.
No, I think I agree with you. Something that I may have overlooked, I didn't realize it. Missouri right now on offense is just cooking. Everybody knows that. They've got a 3,000-yard passer. They've got a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver. That's crazy. I mean, that's a lot of offense. I mean, that is, you talk about balance as balance can be, man. And for that reason, I'm going to take Missouri by a little bit. I think it could be a multiple score game, but I still think overall it's low scoring. But KJ Jefferson's only thrown for 2,100 to be exact. And he's also the leading rusher at 432. Rocket Sanders just not been that guy. He's been hurt, on and off all season. And I think that's been a big dagger and the reason why Arkansas is not going bowling this year. But yeah, I take Missouri in this one as well.
All right, so the next one we have, this is on Saturday, 12 o'clock Eastern time on ABC. We have the Kentucky Wildcats against the ACC championship-bound Louisville Cardinals. What say you in this game?
Yeah, see, this is the time of year where teams get to play spoiler, right? And I think as an SEC fan, nothing would warm my heart more than Kentucky to actually get this win. They're just not going to do it. So give me Louisville.
They're not going to do it in this one.
And Mark Stoops gets fired.
I will,
the safest job in all of college football, and he can get fired from it. That's crazy.
I will shout you out if it happens, but I don't see him getting fired this year.
Yeah, I don't have any insider information, so don't. Yeah, if he does get fired, it was like a just lucky guess, dude.
Yeah, but I am going to take Louisville in this game. Ray Davis will reach 1,000 yards on the season after this game. No, he's sitting at 990 right now, so all he needs is 10 yards to get to 1,000. But Louisville does get this win. They will face off against Florida State in the ACC championship game in the week following that.
Yep. So I guess the following game then, we've got an intriguing SEC West matchup between A&M and LSU in Baton Rouge at 12 o'clock on ESPN. What say you on this one?
Okay, so this one, I'm going to try to make an argument for it, but I think that LSU on offense is too much for Texas A&M. I think that they will score. They're going to outscore Texas A&M, but I think Texas A&M will get some stops to keep the score down. I don't see LSU going out and putting up 40, 50 points in this one. But I think that it'll be, somewhere around maybe the 34 to 20 mark. Because LSU defense is not very good. I think the Texas A&M will score some, but it's going to be a sloppier game than I think a lot of people might think it will be. But ultimately, LSU does pull out this game.
I could see that. I think LSU is going to get theirs. And the reason why is this is the last opportunity for Jay Daniels to prove that he's a Heisman worthy. He doesn't have championship Saturday that next week to kind of prove himself. I expect Jaden Daniels to kind of let loose. LSU could score 30s to low 40s against A&M, and that's even with A&M's spicy defense. Because let's be honest, if Jaden Daniels doesn't do that this week, Bo Nix is a pretty damn good quarterback, and he's going to have championship Saturday to prove why he should win the Heisman too. So I expect Jaden Daniels and LSU's offense kind of do what they did last weekend and just give him every opportunity to score touchdowns as possible, because let's face it, LSU is really not playing for anything other than Jaden Daniels to get that Heisman. So I expect a big day.
Yeah, talk about LSU stats though. So Jaden Daniels this year, he has thrown for 3,577 yards through the air, 36 touchdowns and 4 picks. He is also the leading rusher. 124 carries, 1,014 yards, and 10 touchdowns.
And somebody very much slept on is Malik Neighbors. Brother has almost 1,500 yards receiving.
Malik Neighbors could be the guy to win the Blitnikoff this year. We were all on Luther Burden earlier this year. Marvin Harrison is still up there. Don't sleep. Like you said, don't sleep on Malik Neighbors.
I still like Luther Burden as a pick. But yeah, statistically, man, Malik Neighbors has been everywhere, dude, and just very quietly too. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about how good Malik Neighbors been, because anytime when somebody talks about LSU, it's all about Jay Daniels, as it should be. Don't get me wrong, But yeah, that's pretty crazy. So no, for that reason, I think LSU wins. They win by a lot, and that may come back to hurt me because if they lose. But I just want people to understand the reason why I'm picking that is because I think they're really trying to get him. I think he'll be in New York regardless. But if he wants to be in the top two or to win the thing, I think he's going to have a big day. So we both pick LSU there. We're going to move on to the CBS 3:30 kickoff game between the Iron Bowl and Alabama and Auburn. Now, this one's lost a lot of spice after Auburn has lost to New Mexico State University. I'm taking the Tide by a lot in Jordan Hare.
I'm going to take the Tide, but I'm not going to take them by a lot. I think that this is one of those games that, strange things are going to happen as well as Alabama has been playing so far this year. They're going to get the win. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But I think that just like that Georgia game that Auburn had earlier this year, where I said Georgia was going to blow them out, I think that some things are going to happen and Auburn keeps this game close. But Alabama does win this game ultimately. And also a shout out to my brother-in-law and his dad. They're actually going to be at this game on Saturday.
Shout out to them going to Bama and Auburn. What? Bro, we're Tennessee fans. Why are we shouting that out, Doc? No, I'm joking. I hope they have a fun time.
We're the SEC podcast, though.
I still don't like them. I don't give a. I hope a good Saturday for me is the Tennessee winning, Alabama losing, Florida losing. Anybody not named Tennessee losing, I'm fine with. Honestly, no, I'm joking. I hope they have a great time. I can express in this game and in all games this week coming up, staying healthy. We're getting close to Championship Saturday, and then, obviously bowl season and playoff time. The last thing we need to see is something like Jordan Travis happening, and prayers up to him. You got to stay healthy. I know we don't really control that, but that is one of the most overlooked priorities to a game. I mean, obviously you want to win at all costs, but not at the cost of your best player. Jordan Travis could have easily been in New York as well, and unfortunately probably won't because he had a definite season-ending injury, and I'm afraid it could be career-ending leg injury. If y'all didn't see that, probably don't see it. Just look at the articles. I could see NCAA making a big change this offseason about the hip drop tackle. It's causing more injuries to folks than targeting has ever caused, and so it needs to be looked at. It's basically when somebody wraps around you in the waist, and you're basically dragging them, and they just pick up their feet and sit on your legs. It is snapping ankles and legs left and right. It's not safe, and it's kind of dirty in a way. And I get it. You're just trying to make the tackle, but that's something the NCAA needs to really look at this offseason and get that taken care of. If we're truly about protecting our players, because if we're going to soften up the sport to where we can't use our helmet to make a tackle, then players should not be able to do that. That's my little rant for that. But no, a big key for this week, and especially in the Iron Bowl, is staying healthy. But, man, I think Alabama rolls by a lot. You don't think they're going to win by a lot, but at the end of the day, I think we both agree Bama should win this game. So let's move right on along. Not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Tennessee may not even be ranked. I don't know. I haven't looked. But they play Vanderbilt 3:30 on the SEC Network in Knoxville. Tennessee better win this game, and I'm going to go on record, and I hate doing this because by all means, I love Joe Milton as a person. I think he's a good dude. I think he's a great leader, but I am ready to see the future of this team, and I hope Nico plays.
So I just looked it up, and as I said off the air before we got on, Tennessee ranked 25th in the new AP rankings. So I said
held on by a thread.
Yeah, I said that if Tennessee is still ranked, it'll be 25th, and they are 25th.
Thank you, Miss Karen. Karen put it in the chat, so I appreciate her. I haven't looked just because I've been on here when the rankings dropped, but no, you called that. And so in the CFP, that makes me feel better then because CFP has been higher on Tennessee than the AP has. So CFP, Tennessee may be 24th or 23rd. We'll find out Tuesday night, though. Not that they deserve it because of how ugly the losses have been. But again, like the point I made earlier in the show, 3 of our 4 losses have been to been at top 10 teams in the AEP and the CFP right now. I know they went top 10 when we played them, but let's be honest, that really doesn't matter. It's what the team does throughout the season. But no, all right, cool. Do you agree Tennessee should win that game?
Tennessee's going to win this game, and Jalen Wright will. He's going to get over 1,000 yards on the season. He is sitting at 938. All he needs is 62 yards, and I don't see any reason why Jalen Wright doesn't get 62 yards against Vanderbilt.
Something I didn't point out, and I'm glad you brought that up. What if I told you after a game starting 75-yard rushing touchdown for Jalen Wright against Georgia,
he only ran for yards,
and he didn't even eclipse 100 yards rushing? God dang, bro. All right. Florida State, Florida, 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. That one will be played in the Swamp. Again, if y'all haven't seen, Jordan Travis, unfortunately, will be out for the season, if not the next year, after a horrific leg injury. Florida, meanwhile, is playing some pretty good ball. They got beat by Missouri, very last second field goal, which the defense kind of gave up in that 2-minute drive. What say you in this game with it being for bowl eligibility at home? Does Florida have something spicy for the rivalry game and big college football spoiler?
So I think that Florida is going to keep this game close because there's been times this year where Florida State has struggled a little bit, even with Jordan Travis. I think that Florida State is still going to get theirs on the offensive end, but I think that Florida will keep it close. The Swamp is going to play a factor in this game, but in the end, Florida State, even with a backup quarterback, is too much for Florida, and Florida State pulls out the win to finish the regular season undefeated before going into the ACC championship game.
So I agree with you for the most part, because I kind of alluded to this earlier off air. I think if Florida State is a great football team, they should win this game pretty easily and roll straight onto the ACC championship. My thing is, I don't know if they're a great football team without their starting quarterback. And let's be honest, Florida is without their starting quarterback too. This is going to be a really weird game. It's a big rivalry. Neither team is with their starting quarterback because literally the week prior, both their quarterbacks went out for the season.
I think
I'm going to give you a window. I'm going to take Florida to upset because it's at home, and the top 5, 6. This is like the first time ever. I think there are 6 teams undefeated going into week 12. I think that's got to change this week, and I think Florida may have something spicy for them. So I don't want that as a Vol fan because I want Florida to not be bowl eligible. But there is so much riding on this game, and Florida did show me a lot against Missouri away at Missouri that them coming back home, they may have something cooking. And again, as a Tennessee fan, I don't want that. I mean, a good Saturday for me, again, is a Vol win and a Florida loss, right? But I think Florida, prediction-wise, I think they might really turn the CFB world on its head after a big win.
Yeah, you could be right in this one. I just think that, ultimately the rest of the team for Florida State is more talented than Florida is. But I could see a path to a Florida victory in this game, especially with Jordan Travis being out. But
Robert actually has even mentioned it. And I did not read your comment before I said that, Robert, but he was kind of saying, with how good they played against Missouri, could there be an upset brewing? And that's what I'm kind of basing this off of, man. You always go not necessarily based off the whole season, but kind of like what is the team trending toward right now? And Florida State, after losing Jordan Travis, yeah, they got the win, which is big, but they didn't look dominant whatsoever. And not that Florida did, but they played Missouri pretty damn close. So I think it could be crazy to watch. The next game, though, 7:30 on ABC. Georgia's going to get an easy win over Georgia Tech, correct?
Yeah, it's just Georgia against the JV team. So Georgia is easily going to win this game. It's not even going to be close.
It's the Georgia commits, the 5 stars, and then all the walk-ons that couldn't make it to Georgia that transferred to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
No, I got you. Yeah, big game. But let's talk about possibly the game of the week, and I'm not even joking when I say this. Clemson versus South Carolina and Columbia, South Carolina. Mind you, South Carolina's big win over Kentucky now has them playing for bowl eligibility against Clemson. Clemson's looking a lot better. I will say that the last week or two. But can South Carolina do it 2 weeks or 2 years in a row? And that's upsetting their in-state rival.
So, you mentioned Clemson playing better. South Carolina is also playing better over the last few weeks. I mentioned Spencer Rattler earlier this season that he's had. I didn't realize that he had thrown this many interceptions just because he's been accurate the whole year. He has thrown for 259 completions, 367 attempts. He is over 3,000 yards passing on the year, 19 touchdowns and 7 picks. So a really good year for Rattler. Kate Klubnik, his stats are about the same except for the yards. He's thrown for 2,480 yards, 19 touchdowns and 7 picks. This is the Super Bowl for South Carolina this year.
It's everything I mentioned earlier. They needed to lock down and get ready for this game because everything could be, everything could be righted with a win over Clemson for Shane Beamer.
Yeah, and we mentioned it back earlier that they could have lost to Kentucky, they could have lost to Jacksonville State, but if you beat Clemson, hey, that's big right there. That saves your job if you beat your rival, and that makes it 2 wins in a row. I am going to take Clemson to win the game.
God damn. Yeah. I think you're right on that. I just think it's too easy to stop South Carolina. Stop Leggett. That's it. They can't do anything running the ball. Spencer Rattler can't really do anything else-wise because the moment he has to come off as number one guy, he's getting sacked. I want to see as many SEC teams go bowling, dude. I want to see it. I want to see it so bad. But the way that Clemson just beat the crap out of North Carolina, I can't pull for South Carolina. I think Clemson gets the win. I think you're right. And I'm not trying to throw my record away in 1 week. So, yeah, give me Clemson.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I wouldn't expect you to, but I will say that the South Carolina offensive line over the last few weeks, I don't know how many sacks exactly they're giving up, but they've looked better over the last few weeks than they have over the rest of the season.
I watched a little bit of the games. Spencer's just rolling out every play. I mean, but again, maybe I don't know.
That's the adjustment that they needed.
Yeah,
to have success.
Yeah, I agree with you. But that is it, man. Now we're gonna spin it to the most favorite part of the show where we sometimes forget or sometimes can't even do it because the lines are not out. But it is the Week 13 upset pick of the week. And I'm going to let you go first because you're confident as I've ever seen you be on an upset pick. So let's hear it.
So some people might not like it, and Skylar, you might not like it, but I just picked Clemson to win the game. But my upset pick of the week is going to be South Carolina upsetting Clemson in this game.
See, you can't. We need to make a rule next year that you can't do that. You either got to double down or you can't pick it, period. But, yeah, that's a good pick. That's a good pick. I think you're being a scaredy cat. I think you're being a scaredy cat by not doubling down. But
give me South Carolina to win the game and to upset.
Now I respect it. See, now I respect it. Yeah, now I respect it. I only did that one time this year where I've done that, and I actually felt like crap afterwards because I didn't even want to watch the game because I'm like, well, I'm getting points regardless. That makes no sense. No, like you got to double down or don't do it at all. So I like that. And because I'm telling you to do that, I'm doing the same thing. And I'm taking Florida to upset Florida State for my upset pick of the week. I've already picked them to win outright, and because I believe in it and because I'm ready to see some chaos, I'm ready, dude. I was hoping you'd pick Georgia Tech, honestly, but it is what it is.
I don't even know what the spread of that game is, but it's got to be like 28-30.
47.5, dude. No, I'm joking. I don't know. But no, I'm picking Florida.
Both of our spreads, they are 3-point plays. Florida is a 6.5-point dog to Florida State. South Carolina,
That's it?
Yes.
That is it.
That's it. 6.5.
All right, so let's give them 3 points for home field. That's 9.5 point between teams. That shows me though that I'm right about how important Jordan Travis was to this team, man. Like 11-0 Florida State team that's literally predicted to go into the college football playoff is only literally less than a touchdown favorite against a 5-6 Florida team is crazy. That is beyond me, dude. I hate that that's a 3-point play, but that makes me a little bit more confident in a way that Florida could get the job done, even though Florida's without their quarterback too. So,
yep. South Carolina is a 7.5-point dog to Clemson. So, like I said, both of them are 3-point plays. I didn't mention this earlier, but neither Skylar or myself got our upset games correct last week. I chose we'll put it on record here since we weren't able to last week. We both put TikToks up. I picked North Carolina over Clemson last week, and of course that did not happen. Skylar went for the Southern Miss upset of Mississippi State, and unfortunately that did not happen either.
Did not, unfortunately.
That is going to take us to the end of this episode, and I promised Skylar that I would not bring up basketball until the end of the regular season. So I'm not going to go in depth on this, but I do want to make mention, also watch Tennessee this week at the beginning of the week because there is no football on this day. Monday, Tennessee playing in the Maui Invitational against Syracuse. That game is at 2:30 Eastern on ESPN2. So Tennessee basketball starting off this week.
That's a big game. That's a big tournament. Don't connect if y'all haven't been watching the football or the basketball team. That dude is lights out. He is kind of been that guy that transferred in from God knows where. And that's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure it was a Division II school. I could be wrong though, but that kid's came in and just been a baller. He's kind of like that everything player that really we haven't seen in quite a long time. I mean, he can post up from the three, or he can shoot the three. He can post up down in the paint. He literally can do it all. And his jumper is beautiful. I'm not a big
dunk it too.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not a big basketball guy. You'll understand it when we start breaking down these games, but Michael is. So I told him that we would do this. And then obviously we both played baseball back in high school, and I played a little bit in college. I don't know if you did or didn't, but
I didn't.
Okay, so we'll definitely talk baseball, and my language will be better in baseball than it is in basketball. But I will watch the team. I support the boys. I'm a Vol fan, man, and that's not just dedicated to football. But no, I am very excited about this year's basketball team just because you're healthy, and you've got some stars that can kind of take over a game. And my God, it's going to be fun to watch. So.
Yeah, Dalton. I've seen the comparison. Dalton Connect is just Larry Bird remade. So,
no, absolutely, Robert, man, great show to guys. Wishing you and your families very nice, happy Thanksgiving. I appreciate you, brother, and thank you for tuning back. We miss you so much, man. You actually got the shout out of the show if you didn't hear. So it's great to have you back. And ditto, everybody listening, man. The next time y'all see us or hear from us, unfortunately, the football season, regular season, will be over.
But a little bit bigger as well.
I was going to say everybody's also going to be about 5 pounds heavier, which I don't need Thanksgiving to say that. That's what I'm saying. But no, I just hope that everybody has a good time. This is officially, I guess, the start of the holiday season, but I will always say Merry Christmas. That's just who I am. But hopefully everybody stays safe. I know everybody has some travel plans, and about at the end of the day, man, it's all about spending time with the family. So I hope you'll have a great and happy Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Skylar, you have a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you and your family have a great Thanksgiving as well. Everybody out there watching, have a happy Thanksgiving. Make sure you enjoy your time with your families. Be thankful.
Deviled eggs, mashed potatoes, macaroni and cheese. Oh man, oof!
Can't forget
Turkey.
that ham and that turkey.
That smoked. Oh, lathered up. Oh, I'm joking. All right, y'all have a great week. Yes, we will be doing a recap show, Robert.